Everyone, let's join our palms together and recite Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. You may put your palms down. Today is the first lecture series on introducing the Earth Store Bodhisattva's Dharma doors. The ones that you're most familiar with are 3. Sutra on the Past Vows of Earth Store Bodhisattva, Sutra on the Great Mahayana Collections of Earth Store's 10 Wheels, and Sutra on the Divination of the Effect of Good and Evil Deeds. I will be talking about the first part, the Earth Store Sutra. Since this sutra is well known to everyone, I plan to keep my talk simple and practical. Before we delve into the sutra, I would like to give a brief overview of the Earth Store Sutra practices. This includes reciting the sacred name of Earth Store Bodhisattva, reciting the sutra on the past vows of Earth Store Bodhisattva, praising the Bodhisattva, bowing the repentance, make offerings, and so forth. If we could apply them wholeheartedly when we practice, we would definitely gain great benefit. We will also give a little bit of summary of what the sutra is about. We will also take a look at the reference list. In the extended Tripitaka collection, Master Jinglian of the Qing dynasty, also known as Master Lin Jie, wrote 2 books commentating the Earth Store Sutra. Commentaries on the Sutra of Earth Store Bodhisattva Past Vows, and Discourses on the Sutra of Earth Store Bodhisattva's Past Vow. The discourse briefly outlined the structure and meaning of the vows. It's like a string that strings together. And if you're interested to learn more, these can be found in archive 0383 of the extended Tripitaka. We will also study a brief explanation of the Sutra on Earth Store Bodhisattva Past Vows by Venerable Master Hua. And also from Hong Yi Master. And also, we'll look at lectures explaining the Sutra on Earth Store Bodhisattva's Past Vows by Older Master Dao Yuan in Taiwan. Another of the reference is commentary written by a lay Buddhist, Hu Wei Chuan. He was Master Hong Yi's disciple. Master Hong Yi encouraged this student to write the commentary to the sutra. Centuries after Dharma Master Siksananda completed the translation of the sutra in the Tang Dynasty, very few commentaries were written. It's likely that the sutra is very easily understood, so eminent and virtuous monks saw no need to spend time explaining it. Besides the Qing dynasty's discourses, and also the commentaries. What I find is layman whose commentary the easiest to understand along with the two other titles. So you're welcome to look into those, and you can find those on the website too. I believe everyone has recited the Earth Source Sutra before. Some of you could even recite it from memory, as the sutra well works in your mind like a spring water. And as the words appear before your eyes, the meanings likely are also imprinted in your heart. Therefore, if I just mention or touch it just for a bit, you would likely understand, or you would know which section I'm referring to. And we also know there's the 3 chapters here, the first, middle, and last roles. So the first roles include chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 on spiritual powers in the palace of the Travas, Trimsha heaven, to the last one, karmic retributions of beings in Jambudvipa. And then the middle row has the next 5 chapters, chapter 5 to 9, talking about names of the hells, the praises, praises to Lord Yama, his flowers, and names of the Buddhas. Finally, the last row has 4 chapters, conditions of comparative merit and virtue of giving. 11, the Dharma protection of an earth spirit. 12, benefits derived from seeing and hearing. And 13, the entrustment of people and gods. There are the 3 rows. Now, as we know, all Buddhist sutras are divided into 3 parts: the introduction, principle proper, and circulation. Introduction is analogous to our head, as it gives the sutra an important start. If you read the introduction in the sutra, then you see the whole skeleton. The principle proper is analogous to our torso, and circulation is to our feet, as the Dharma is propagated to wherever we can reach on foot. In the 13 chapters, the first one is introduction. And then the last 3 chapters are the circulation. That is the chapters 11 to 13. So that's the head and the bottom of this sutra. So now the principle proper in the middle, divided into 4 subsections. And this, so on chapter 2, gathering of the division bodies, introduces Earth Store Bodhisattva as a teacher and spiritual guide for living beings. Chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are listing the many categories of students, their conditions and propensities, and also the teaching process that depicts the teacher guiding students from ignorance to true understanding, from restricted freedom to liberation. and not only from restricted freedom to liberation, but also from unsafe to deliverance, from a Buddha to be to a Buddha. This process continues. And then it continues until finally leading beings to walk the Buddha path. Into chapter 9, the names of the Buddhas, and then chapter 10, the conditions of comparative merit and virtues of giving. So we can circle them so you can see clearly in this diagram. So there are 3 verses at the end of the commentary with the same meter as the incense praise. And these help summarize the first, middle, and last rows, respectively. So the first summary, here the summary, the verses for the first summary would be: the Buddha ascends to Triastrimsha heaven to repay the kindness of his mother, emanating light to summon all Sthitiparbha's division bodies, and proclaiming the karmic retributions and their corresponding conditions. He teaches far and wide for the sake of promulgating the cause, and rescues confused and drowning beings since Kalpa bygone. So the Buddha ascended to Triastrimsha heaven to teach his mother the Dharma for 3 months. Since the event took place in this heaven, the chapter is titled Spiritual Powers in the Palace of the Triastrimsha heaven. Now, why did the Buddha go there? He wanted to teach the Dharma to his mother because not long after the Buddha was born, his mother passed away. And the Buddha had been propagating the Dharma for 49 years, but did not have the chance to expound Dharma for his mother to repay her and express his deep gratitude. That's why the Buddha entered, before he entered Nirvana, he ascended to this heaven to teach his mother and entrust all sentient beings to earth store Bodhisattva. As a matter of fact, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas view all sentient beings as their parents from past lives. Hence, make vows to save every sentient being as deep gratitude to all the parents. This is reinforcing that all sentient beings are all the parents from past lives. And this is the first chapter, Spiritual Powers in the Palace of the Triastrimsha heaven. Now, the second chapter is titled Gathering of the Division Bodies. Here, the Buddha shone his light upon earth store Bodhisattva to bless him. All the Bodhisattva's division bodies then came together to accept the Buddha's entrustment and listen to his instructions. So all of these divisions came here to listen to the Buddha. And this summarized the second chapter. What about the third chapter? The different corresponding conditions refer to the karma of living beings and their karmic retributions. Causation is implicitly inferred from the conditions. The character cause is enlarged in the next line, as cause and conditions are connected. With cause comes effect, and conditions, with conditions comes the cause. So the third chapter focuses on the causal conditions, while the fourth chapter focuses on the karmic retributions. Now, if we read the sutra text carefully, we'll realize that this chapter more or less talks about retributions. And we can interpret the character karma the other way around. Authors sometimes invert the order in verses and poetry. The word karma can also be understood as such. The last line depicts the Buddha rescuing living beings and helping them escape from the sea of boundless suffering in the three realms of untold kalpas. Now, when I was looking for some pictures online to make this PowerPoint, and then I remembered I have had some good references from other Dharma masters. So I decided to use and borrow the comic strip that was from layman Lin Juquan, as his drawing captured all the awe-inspiring scenes of this sutra. Which is quite adaptable to children and adults alike. And there's a lot of veneration in this drawing. This part depicts the great assembly of humans and gods in Trimsha heaven that I mentioned earlier. And as the sutra unfolds, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas arrive from countless worlds throughout the 10 directions, all praising Shakyamuni Buddha and Earth Store Bodhisattva. And we also see countless millions of devas, dragons, ghosts, spirits that were all present, including Lord Yama and the hungry goats, who will appear later in chapter 8, and we will give more details later. In the first 6 and 12 chapter of this sutra, the Buddha radiated light 3 times. Interestingly, these are all milestone moments in the sutra. The Buddha first emitted light when he expounded on filial respect, praising Earth, Store Bodhisattva of his filial act, and explaining the cause and effect in detail. Buddha devised an elaborated framework of cause and effect and systematically taught it to living beings. Besides being a sutra on filial respect, it is also a sutra on cause and effect. In this chapter, the Tathagata smiled and released tens of trillions of radiant clouds and wondrous music before starting to teach the Dharma. The Buddha then told 2 stories about Earth Store Bodhisattva's past lives. That's why the sutra is of a filial kindness, because Earth Store Bodhisattva has been practicing filial respect and kindness to his parents in the past lives and is venerated as a role model to living beings. Lastly, chapter 4 gives another vivid narration of Earth Store Bodhisattva's past life as a Brahmin lady who helped her deceased mother escaping the sufferings and attaining happiness in the heavens. Now here, the first story. This is about the great elder's son who made a magnificent vow before Tathagata, lion of vigor replete with myriads of practices. Now he vowed to rescue all sentient beings and that he would not realize Buddhahood until they all became Buddhas. He has made this resolve due to his aspiration to attain the Buddha's splendid hallmarks. that was very, very rare and difficult to come by, as we generally do not make such resolutions. Only people who deeply want to repay the mother's kindness will make such a great and strong vow. To help the mother relieve this deep suffering. In the second story, a Brahmin lady has made offerings before Tathagata, king of self-mastery and Samadhi, flower of awakening. And after her mother's death, she grieved so much and asked of her mother's whereabouts because she really missed her mother so deeply. And she really wanted to know and hoped the Buddha would offer her a pointer. Being overcome with sorrow, tears rolled down her cheeks like falling rain. And the Tathagata, king of self-mastery and Samadhi, flower of awakening, instructed her to recite the name upon reaching home, and she would know where the mother had gone. I imagine that many of you have been really touched by this particular area. Now, the Brahmin woman suddenly lunged toward the voice she was hearing and then fell, injuring herself severely. Those around her supported and attended to her. And after a long time, she was finally revived. The kneecaps, the joints have been hurt with this jump. Now, from these lines, from these words, we can deeply feel and have a deep impression on how much Brahmin lady misses her mother. And then she missed her mother so much she cannot conceal her excitement and also her tears. And this is because the lady had the deep filial piety for the parents and so was reacting like this. Now, having heard the Buddha's instruction, the Brahmin lady went straight home and started reciting the Buddha's name without break. Now, that night, she saw a completely different scene. She was in meditation and then was greeted by a vast sea with many people suffering. And so this was actually a manifestation of the hell beings. To the west of the Iron Range mountain were the first, second, and third layers of the sea that exceeded one another in the intensity of torments and miseries. These symbolize the seas of our karma and the seas of the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion that ensnare and trap us within. And we're stuck in these torturous oceans. The greed, hatred, and delusion. Oceans of greed, hatred, and delusion. Now, because the Brahmin lady has been reciting the Buddha's name, she was blessed and protected by the Buddha's power and was unafraid of the scary sight. And then a ghost king called Poisonless came up to her and asked, why is she here and what does she want? And she inquired, where is this? And what are these people doing here? And so the Ghost King started answering each of her questions. After that, the Buddha then later disclosed that the Brahmin lady was one of Earth's Store Bodhisattva's reincarnation. So this was the summary and sort of the skeleton of the first chapter, which was similar to the great elder son in the first story. So now talking about filial piety as the main theme. So then in the fourth chapter, we'll talk about it together, as it has to do with the principle of cause and effect. So we're going to continue. Now in the fourth chapter, karmic retributions of beings in Jambudvipa. There are two stories of Earth Store Bodhisattva's past lives. The first story is about the kings of two small countries. One of the kings was Tathagata realization of all wisdom, who vowed to quickly realize Buddhahood so he could rescue all beings. The other king vowed to become a Buddha only after he had saved all beings. And the latter king later became Earth Store Bodhisattva, while the former king became Tathagata realization of all wisdom. Now, through the fourth story, which is the story of Maiden Bright Eyes. So the Maiden Bright Eyes met in our hut on Lam's round. Coincidentally, her mother had recently passed away. So she sincerely asked for the news of her mother when the Arhat offered to grant her a wish upon accepting her sincere offering of the food. Then the Arhat told her to return home and recite the name of Tathagata Eyes of Pure Lotus. Just keep reciting that name, and then you'll have your answers. So as soon as she returned, she did exactly as was told, earnestly, with the utmost sincerity. Then the Buddha then told her her mother would soon be reborn to a servant in her household, and there's an infant that could speak at three days old, which is interesting. Now her mother, who was previously destined to suffer in the hells, was granted a parole and was reborn as a maid's baby due to the blessing she received from the daughter's offering to the Tathagata Eyes of Pure Lotus. Now this unusual baby started talking on the third day after birth. Yeah, the babies usually are born crying, but what's unusual is on the third day, this baby started talking already. So commentators attribute this to the bright eyes filial respect for the mother. And as a result of making offerings to the Arhat and Tathagata, the bright eyes had helped her lessen the retributions for the serious offenses she has committed. However, she had a lowly birth and could only live for 13 years. And then after that 13 years, she would have to be born in a country of no worries. And after cultivating for some time, she would become a Buddha. Now, very much unlike the story in the first chapter, she did not ascend to the heavens, but returned to human realm to undergo lighter retributions, which was already a great reduction from what she has deserved. Now, of the four stories, the Brahmin lady in the first chapter is a classical embodiment of the Sutra. So now let's explore this question. Why did Bright Eye's mother fall into the hell? Her retribution had to do with her killing, slandering, and insulting others and the three jewels. Perhaps she was condescending and abusive due to her high social status, slandering the three jewels too, for sure. Now, the sutra did not specify these, but it did mention that Bright Eye's mother did love eating seafood, especially the fish roe. So we can take a look at the drawing that came from Collected Stories of Protecting Lives by Feng Zikai and Chronicle with verses by Hong Yi Master. Imagine having your nails ripped off. So here's the picture. So I'm not going to read the verses. You can read it and try to experience, having your nails ripped off, and if you feel the pain and try to run off. So if your nail it hurts, then you can imagine being on the fish scale, how painful that would be. And so the last one is the famous saying, do not do unto others what you would not want done unto you. So if we're so afraid of the pain, how can we not think of the others suffering? So this summarized the fourth chapter. Yeah, because we've moved up chapter 4, now we're going to return to chapter 2, the division bodies gather. Now this picture, you can see it clearly, illustrates Earth Star Bodhisattva's many division bodies that convenes at this critical moment in Trimsha heaven to receive the Buddha's request. And the Buddha entrusting Earth Star Bodhisattva with the future of the living beings. Saying specifically, please take over the duty of teaching and transforming sentient beings, especially those who are stubborn, for those I did not manage to teach. I'm passing them to you. So this really resonates and reminds us of the other chapter, chapter 13. So the commentators are explaining that this entrustment continues to emphasize the reminder from the Buddha to Asura Bodhisattva of this entrustment. And again, kind of like I've troubled you and will trouble you again with this. So now we'll go into chapter 3, contemplating the karmic conditions of beings. Upon Queen Maya's request for the Dharma, Earth Star Bodhisattva described the various karma committed by sentient beings and the corresponding retributions. This chapter, he extensively expounded on cause and effect, give vivid accounts and details of myriad sufferings in the relentless hell. So the Bodhisattva told Queen Maya, beings Sijambuddhipa, who are not filial to their parents, who slander the three jewels, who do not venerate sutras, will fall into the relentless hell for thousands of kalpas without any hope of escape. So here, Lady Maya further asked the Bodhisattva, why is that hell called relentless? And what are the 5? The Bodhisattva answered, 5 karmic responses account for this name. Which 5? First, punishment is undergone day in, day out without a moment of respite. 2, regardless of one or many beings, the space always fills up in the hell, referring to the spatial aspect of the hell. Number 3, there's no moment of rest, referring to relentless sufferings in the hell. There are also every means of retributions that cannot be avoided, hence not a momentary respite, and that's what it's called relentless. And then after that, the king of four heavens appeared, and they made a request for the Dharma. And they said, our Star Bodhisattva has been saving sentient beings for such a long time through this magnificent vow. But why is there no end to his work? Living beings keep returning to the hells after they have made their escape. The vicious cycle prompts the Bodhisattva to make vows after vows, rescuing them without end. That's a question the kings of four heavens had. So Earth Star Bodhisattva started explaining the retributions of cause and effect. So the differences between chapter 3 and 4, we've explained earlier. Chapter 3 is on karmic causes, and chapter 4 is focused on effects. Chapter 3 paints a vivid picture of relentless hell, describing in detail the heavy suffering. Chapter 4 reiterates the karmic effects living beings undergo, further emphasizing the cause and effect of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants. And the Earth Star Bodhisattva kept reminding all the living beings in the hope that we could avoid all these sufferings. The Bodhisattva is like a parent, constantly reminding the kids to stay away from dangerous places, dangerous people, dangerous things, wherever they are out. Therefore, clearly understanding the cause and staying vigilant of the effects are an essential part of Buddhist practice. If one does not even believe in the basics or be wary of cause and effects, one's practice will surely go astray. Time flies by. I'll talk about this faster or we won't finish. So in 2000 and 2001, I was leading my graduating class to translate a book, and this was the Zhuzi's Maxim on Managing a Household from a Canadian student that came to CTTP for class. So the mother encouraged the student to translate, but I've left it there. So taking advantage of these last 2 years during the pandemic, we've translated these. So now we're gonna briefly introduce this particular book and a story. So there are many maxims that are short, but you may have heard of it. You reflect that every grain of rice comes with much sweat. You ponder that not a single thread is woven without much toil. You'd better prepare an umbrella before the rainy season. You don't want to dig a well only when you get thirsty. And these reflect our everyday life, naturally can relate to it. So let's look at the author, Zhu Bolu from Jiangsu province. He passed the national exam to work in the government, but never wanted to be an official. And so, yeah, because of the king at the time, he didn't want to be an official. So then he devoted to education instead. Started a private school for the locals. And because of his literary training, he was able to write these maxims that are relatable to everyone. And these also reflect his worthy and noble character. He has abstained from evils and advocated goodness, never deceived anyone, had never told a lie his whole life. So every single one in the area deeply respect him, and so much so that he was often invited to be the judge in the nether world. So once in a state of partial consciousness, he had a dream. he was greeted by many people in a courtroom, and he was put on a judge's robe, presided over a trial. And then he saw somebody from his hometown brought to court and recognized he practiced Buddhism for a while, but quit not long after. And now, so he was able to see that his good deeds were not enough to compensate for the evil ones. Now, according to Netherworld's law, he should have been born as a dog to make amends. But Zhu Bailu wanted to acquit this guy from the same hometown and bring him the good in him. So he asked, "Can you remember reading the Sutra before?" Now, the person ought to have remembered, but being obstructed by karmic obstacles, he acted against his conscience and replied, "No, I don't recall the thing." Now, his heavy karma was way too strong and worked against him. Still, Zhu Bolu persisted. He wrote the word Buddha on his palm and told him to read it out loud. And so that if he was able to read this one, can reduce the karma. But this guy has refused to say the word. And this is when Zhu realized he has lost his inherent Buddha nature and would not pronounce the word Buddha. For the last time, he asked the defendant, "Can you remember any of the sutras that you've read?" Still, the guy said no. Now, when a person refuses to cooperate, he was very stubborn, and so because of this, he had no choice but to persecute him according to the law, giving orders to warden to wrap him in dog skin. And then when he came to, he was turned into a dog, wagging tail, and walked away. So we're out of time. So with chapter 5, make some changes here. So in the next time, we will work this part in the next lesson. So I will stop for now. And with Master Hua's teachings, you have time and you can take a look at it. Okay, so now we will invite 2 groups to share. First, begin with the G group. Amito, for someone from G group. Oh, unable to do unmute. They're not able to unmute themselves. Okay, so unable to unmute. So I'm here sharing on behalf of G group. Because of time limitation, we discussed 2. So can understand. So without tongue, we understand that because of slandering, we can understand more. But with the 100 tongues, we're not so sure. And then in chapter 3, okay, so there was a discussion on the relentless hell, why being in the relentless hell, and then we're wondering why. And so one of them discussed that because of the killing involved, that's why goes to the relentless hell, and the rest we haven't discussed. Now, the retribution of having no tongue, if you look at it, perhaps Master Wa have said. So maybe you see that there's a tongue, but one cannot talk anymore. It's as if invisibly the tongue, the root of the tongue has been cut off, even though you cannot really see. So like it's like the soul of the tongue has been cut out and one cannot speak no more. If any Dharma master has other thing to explain, especially the 100 tongues. Due to time restraint, let's invite group H to. Okay, I'm from H group. We also mainly discuss 2 questions. For those who committed sexual misconduct, then they would be born into birds. So that could be sparrows, pigeons. These are the kind of birds that like to have a lot of sexual acts and lots of lust. And so this is a kind of retribution. And then the second one is those who were burned, who burn others, who boil others, would be reborn into being burned in the relentless hell. And so some of us discussed because of what you have done, you've been burning or boiling others with boiling water, then of course you're being repaid with the exact same retribution of also being burned by fire or extreme heat. And so lots of healings involved. And so this is why S is with cause, S is with effect. And so that's mainly the 2 things we have discussed. So with here, I don't need to add anything else, right? Just wanted to add with the prayer ceremony recently, it talked about a fish with hundreds of heads. And so one of the Dharma brothers mentioned that we were talking about if there's the fish with 100 heads, does that mean it has 100 tongues? Well, it's not likely, but with the hell with no tongues or 100 tongues, if there are very serious pain, like dental problems, mouth sore, that's very, very serious. It could be similar, but I cannot say exactly that this is how it's for sure. And so I would invite other Dharma masters to chime in with more references. But overall, in English, what comes and goes and not. So all things that have happened, will come back to you. And so however strong you've put out the cause, then however strong it'll come back to you as well. So this is why S is caused, S is affected. And then if we kind of clarify a bit of these principles, it'll be clear. And so we're moving on to homework. So we would like to invite you to share a story, one that has made an impression upon you of cause and effect. Keep it within 400 words, whether recorded or written. Please do not download stories from the internet. Yeah, so please make sure that these are the stories that has happened with you, around you, or you have heard of it, and around cause and effect. And then that's worth keeping, so that please go home and think about a story. Apologies about running out of time. So dedication of merit, please put your palms together.
我念中文好吗？愿以此功德庄严佛净土，上报四重恩，下济三途苦。若有见闻者，悉发菩提心，尽此一报身，同生极乐国。好，顶礼老和尚。好，大家晚安，阿弥陀佛。